give myself this, task of podcasting, so I can't complain. But I'm busy. It's hot out, and looking forward to kind of winding down a little bit during this off season here for me personally. But thank you for jumping back on board and trying to do this
Oh
again.
yeah, why not? It
Uh,
was a good conversation last time, so why
well,
not do it again?
yeah. Well, the cool thing about the conversation was the getting to know you. But on my end, I just had so many fucking. I had a shit show of a situation, but nonetheless, like I was listening back to it today to kind of refresh my memory. And yeah, and it was a great conversation. And getting to know you, let me kind of recap for those that are watching this and listening. That we, Frank and I had a conversation a couple months back, and the audio quality on my end was horrendous, and I didn't feel comfortable putting this out with it sounding the way that it sounded. I didn't want, Frank, I didn't want you to get this impression that I didn't put, a lot of effort into it. And I wanted to make sure that the best effort was put forth. So nonetheless, Frank and I are meeting again. We're going to have this conversation again, God willing, with, no interruptions. But Frank, you're in South Carolina, and I got hip to you through Facebook. And it was on Facebook that I knew you were. Was it? Were you in York, Pennsylvania?
So I lived in Lancaster for the better part from about 17 years old till 49 years old.
Okay.
um, and I worked in York City, Pennsylvania, in York County for 20 years as a teacher.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that was when I reached out to you, Frank. I was trying to get you in, and you were like, "Dude, I just moved to South Carolina like 3 years ago." So I was just like, "Fuck it, let's do a virtual interview anyway." Because watching you on social media, you've got a vibe, you've got a presence. You seem like you're mad cool. You've got a lot to talk about. Obviously, we've already talked.
Yeah.
Let's start over when you discussed. You said that your parents are Italian. You mentioned your father's Sicilian. You are
Yeah.
from Brooklyn, New York.
Yes.
And your father, talk to me about how your father was having a tough time with you, didn't know what he was going to do with you. You were getting into all kinds of shenanigans, and he sends you to
Well,
Pennsylvania.
well, I think it, so. What was going on? It was like a combination of things. So, um, I was just making some very poor choices. I mean, I've always made poor choices as a kid. It seems like never really learned my lesson, and so between making those poor choices and getting in a lot of trouble and essentially costing them a lot of money because I was going to Catholic school. He didn't want to see us in public school. He had his reasons. And back in 1986, my ninth grade year at Bishop Ford, I think was costing him 6 grand.
Mm.
And that's on a bus driver's salary. And I missed somewhere in the neighborhood of like 70 days. So yeah, he wasn't too fucking happy. And then you combine that with after eighth grade, my mom took me and my sister down to Florida to visit her sister for 2 weeks. Um, she lived in Sarasota. And it was beautiful, like Naples area. It was beautiful. And I think it was the first time, real first time my mom was outside of Brooklyn, outside of her neighborhood. Because when she came back, she's like, Joe, we're getting the fuck out of Brooklyn. Like she didn't want no part of it. She like to put it in her words, like she saw how dirty Brooklyn was. And that's why people like now will ask me, you go back to Brooklyn? Fuck, my Brooklyn died a long time ago. My Brooklyn was dirty and gritty. But yeah, so yeah, those combinations, and then my dad essentially, he had a long track record as a concrete foreman, working different jobs in construction. Um, one of the jobs being the World Trade Center. I think he
Mm.
he worked on that from I think the 50 I want to say the 45th or the 55th floor on up, and then he transitioned into city bus driver.
Mm.
And I guess he was just at a time in his life. I mean, he was probably looking at about 10 to 15, about 10-ish years before he could retire. But um, yeah, it was fucking driving the city bus isn't easy work.
No, no. Well, I would think it's
Yeah, I
especially in New
mean,
York.
no, it's fucking horrible. It's fucking horrible. I can't count how many times he came home, like because he had a fucking fight. Like,
Gotcha.
like I mean, he come home from the ER, back all cut up because fucking somebody tried to get at him with a broken bottle.
Oh,
It just so I think he was at a time in his life where he wanted to roll the dice and take his shot also. So it was kind of like this perfect storm. And he rolled the dice on himself. He sold everything, moved to Lancaster, and he bought the Brownstown restaurant.
okay.
I don't know if you're from. I don't know.
No.
Now, I'm going back. It hasn't been there in quite a long time, so I'm going back like to, 1987.
Okay.
And so him and his like lifetime buddy from Brooklyn bought the restaurant, and things were going well. And then he wanted to like do his own thing, and he bought the then Harmony Inn. If you remember the
No.
Harmony Inn, that was downtown on Queen Street,
Okay.
and and he got some bad luck. I mean, it was at a recession that happened right around or right after Desert Storm.
Oh,
There
okay.
was a recession, and he got caught up in that bullshit, and he had to give up the restaurant.
Mm.
So and man, he took his shot, and I think that always sat well with him. You know what I mean? Because he took his shot. So yeah, yeah, and but that move, what that did for me was essentially just save my life, though.
What kind of
Because
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, I was just saying that move saved my life because if he would have just stuck in Brooklyn, he would have killed me, or I would have just probably ended up doing some bad shit. So either way, like fuck, my outcome wouldn't have been good staying there.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll be honest, like when I was thinking about moving to South Carolina, I thought about my father because he that was the age he made the move. He was 49.
Gotcha.
So that's when he took his shot. And it wasn't like I was taking a real shot. I mean, it's not a real risk. I mean, I'm coming down here just being a teacher somewhere else. But to just doing something that's a little bit different, you know what I mean? So I always thought that was cool that it kind of happened right about the same time.
Yeah. I
What were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
actually, it's what you just said kind of feeds into what my next question was, and I was going to start by saying that I feel like the older I get, I kind of start looking back at what my dad may have been going through or dealing with, or what his decision making, what impacted that, and I start to relate to it more. And so when you said that when you made your move to South Carolina, you could start to see like the parallels of where your father may have been, even though you said it was a little different of the circumstances, but it's still like let's just do it, and we don't
Yeah,
know what's going to come of it, and that's a big decision to make, dude.
yeah, yeah. But it's funny though because I think when you're on the right path and you're making the right decisions, like everything just kind of opens up. You know what I mean? Like the universe talks. It really does. I just for like the 18th time, I just got finished reading The Alchemist. I don't know if you've ever read it.
No.
And basically it's about a shepherd that lives in Spain, and he wants to live out his personal legend, like his life goal. And he along the way he just learns how to read the universe, so nature and everything that talks, because it's all directing us in a certain way if you just pick up on it,
Yeah.
right? So like when I was coming down here, I mean, as soon as like we were visiting here, right? So quick little story. So how it goes is So my kids are to my first wife, and the relationship hasn't been the best. I think everybody could have done a better job in it, but it is what it is. So
Gotcha.
we were coming up on, the kids were 18 and 19 at the time, and the mom was still using me as kind of like a middleman. And I'm like, y'all are fucking adults. I'm
Yeah.
done. Like
Yeah.
my job is over. Barring an emergency, you talk to them.
Sure.
And but because their relationship is kind of, it, man, it's weird, right? It's
Gotcha.
different,
I hear you, dude.
and yeah, it's different. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm dropping the kids off at your house, and they live in fucking Charleston. She lives in Charleston, which is about 90 minutes north from here. I'm dropping them off there for 2 weeks. Y'all figure out your lives. This is the last time I'm helping any of y'all try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I said, just hit the coast and find some place that doesn't have too many people. And we landed in Buford. And when we were driving through, it just has a different feel, man. So the closest thing I can compare it to now, when I grew up in Brooklyn, up in a neighborhood called Sheepshead Bay.
Okay.
So it was a fishing community. It was a bay fishing community. Boats would come in. If you want fresh fish, you go down there and get it right off the boat. And then because of the islands, it reminded me very much of Hawaii. I spent 2 weeks on Hawaii, and if I was smart, I would have just stayed there, but I came home. But so coming here, that those were the like the vibes for me. And then just the more we hung out, and we made a point to just like hang out with the locals. So we found the local spots, and we just go in and kind of like sit in a corner,
Nice.
talk to people. Nobody had anything bad to say about this place at all.
Hmm.
Like, we're thinking about moving here. Would you move? Like, nothing bad to say at all. My problem is it's growing.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. It's losing its is it starting to lose the
No,
uniqueness of it?
no, so like in my neighborhood, it's not going to grow to be that much more, right? All the houses in this development have been here since, well, my house is 1974, five, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it's an older development. So that I don't have to worry about anything more coming into here.
Gotcha.
Um, you know what I mean? But it's just, and it doesn't wreck the vibe per se, but I'm not going to be able to deal with
Gotcha.
it for,
Gotcha.
a long period of time. So we're already talking like 5 year plan, because then what's the next move? I mean, if I had it my way, I'd just sell everything and fucking travel the world.
Well, you mentioned
Fuck
Hawaii
it.
about 5 minutes ago. What happened there?
Mention what?
Hawaii. You mentioned Hawaii about 5 minutes ago.
Oh, I was, man, that was my first marriage. That was a 2 week honeymoon that our parents gave us.
Okay, I
Yeah,
gotcha.
like, yeah, I spent most of the time by myself, kind of.
Gotcha.
But like the red flags were fucking smacking you in the
Oh,
face,
dude.
like. But I enjoyed Hawaii.
Yeah.
I did it. Like, we were 2 weeks on Maui,
Okay. Okay.
and it was fucking, man. I don't know what it's like now, but going back circa 1997,
Okay.
it was like heaven on earth, man. Like, it was beautiful. And that's kind of how I felt when I got here. Like, not necessarily heaven on earth, but it's beautiful and it's peaceful and it's slow. And I like that slow.
Yeah, I get the vibe from
Uh,
you that you really do the 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 ambiance of the scenery around you needs to be at a certain frequency for you to really want to resonate there. I get that vibe from you. My wife and I are the same way in our own way. You know, my wife loves the ocean, loves the beach. We're not there quite yet, but one day, we'll get to a point where we can do something like that. But, I like having a lot of land. If I could have a lot of land, I would be in heaven right now. And the older I get, the more I'm like, man, my neighbors are too close to me. You know what I mean? Like, I like my
yeah.
neighbors,
Whoa.
but they're too close to me.
Oh,
So
no, I'm exactly the same way. So Like, so what we're thinking about, what we're looking at doing is, because South Carolina taxes your retirement, and I'm tired of giving the fucking government money and
Yeah.
how they fucking feel right taxing retirement. I'll never understand that shit.
Yeah, amen on
But
that.
uh, whatchamacallit, there are some states that don't tax, like Tennessee. So I'm looking at kind of like Eastern Tennessee, getting kind of like the foothills, get like 3 acres, put a tiny house on it,
Mm.
and just fucking. I told her, I said, because we were talking about who goes first. I'm like, you go first. I sell everything. I buy a school bus, I drag it halfway up a fucking mountain, and that's where I live out the rest of my life.
There you go. My wife tells me I'm not allowed to die first. I'm like, I don't know, babe.
Oh,
She's more
I told her
I'm
I'm
more
out.
stressful
I
than she
told
is.
her I don't give a fuck. I'm outliving everybody. I don't, and I won't feel bad about it for a moment. Everybody has their fucking punch card. If mine happens to be a little later than everybody else's,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Talk to me about like the nonchalant, low key vibes that resonate off you. Last time we talked a little bit about you getting into yoga, and obviously I want to get back into that. But the reason why I bring that up because I want to piggyback off that is that I feel like that plays a significant role in. Are you the kind of cat that you just let shit slide off you? You don't sweat the bullshit. You focus on the positive energy, the good frequency from people. Like how does that work with you, dude? Because that's the kind of vibes I get from you just from looking at
yo,
your
man.
posts.
So I'm always reminding me. I'm always reminding my students because they'll get fucking sideways. and
Like don't
and
get it twisted.
they'll get fucking sideways for like days, like, you know what I mean, and we keep having to have the same conversation, and then it gets to the point where I'm like, look, y'all got to understand, you're mistaking my kindness for weakness,
Yeah.
and I don't love my job that much,
Mm.
so y'all got to figure your life out right now. So I mean, so I mean, I'll lead with kind. I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Like I'll take the serious pause. Like my wife, she's talking to her friend, and they're talking about some issues, and everybody's trying to get on this one guy, and I'm like, but nobody knows the intentions of what this guy did. Everybody's fucking assuming, but nobody asks him, hey, why the fuck did you do that?
Yeah.
And I'm not taking anybody's side, but you can't argue. You can't say I'm wrong when you don't fucking know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just try to take that pause. I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. But I'm going to be honest. My wife almost 2 Thursdays ago almost had to come bail me out of jail because I go to the gym in the morning, right? So it's 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'm at the gym. I'm doing my thing. I go in the sauna. I curl up in a, I sit like this in a corner in the
Yeah.
sauna, and I meditate. That's all I do. So I'm meditating, and there's this guy sitting in there. I've seen him before. We don't talk or nothing. It's just opposite energy, right? Yeah, I could feel his energy. So it's just opposite. I don't want no part of it.
Mm.
So I'm sitting there. I'm in my own little zone, and then all of a sudden I hear this splash, and I'm like, did this motherfucker just spit out a mouthful of water? So I sit up, and I see him grab his thing, and he takes a sip, and he does it again. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, this is a public space. Then he called me the asshole.
Uh,
Like, I'm the asshole in this situation. So, long story short, I got up, I got the lifeguards in control of the sauna for whatever reason. And this guy is still jawing about, like, I rinsed my mouth out. I'm like, rinse or spit, the action is with the same intention. You don't want what's in your mouth.
yeah. Yeah.
I said, and he's like, fuck you, you're an asshole. I said, you know what? I'm going to leave because if I don't, you're going to need a dentist. I'm going to need a lawyer. And I'm not like, but it's been a long time since I came that close to wanting to smack. And like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
him, I would just want to fucking smack. Like I just open hand smack. Let me see how many blood vessels I could break in your face. And but yeah, yeah. So I that if that answers your question, I always lead with the good foot. Like I could have jumped on him with that first splash, but I'm like, no, let me make sure. Like,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
sometimes you
that was
gotta let
fucking
people.
wild.
You gotta remind people too, like you said, don't
Oh
mistake my
man,
kindness for weakness. Like
yeah,
sometimes you gotta put
right.
the foot on them a little bit just to say, hey, the dog's still in here.
Yeah. Oh, and I love it like when like coworkers, like because they'll talk a certain way. I'm like, who do you think you're talking to right now? And they just look at me. I'm asking you a fucking question.
Yeah.
But I don't care who you are, what your title is. You're not going to talk to me any such way, and I'm going to let you know it. And so, where did this come from,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it came so much from. I don't think it came so much from. Well, maybe with yoga, definitely with yoga, and I say meditation, as far as being able to work really hard at taking my attachment out of things and being able to pause to see things as clearly as I can before reacting to it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So yoga has been a big part of that, but I think the really big part of it was just when I got sober and through recovery, because you spend all those years um, as an addict trying not to feel, right, being numb, because you don't want to deal with any of that shit because you do give a fuck and you don't know how to give a fuck, and it's just it's just too tough for anybody. Like what? Well, in this case, too tough for me, right? So I had to numb all that pain because it was just too tough. So when I come out of that, I'm still gonna have those feelings, right? Or I'm gonna still have to deal with that shit. So how do you deal with that shit? Work on attachments, right? Everything comes to an end, all that Buddhist stuff,
Yeah.
right? But the big thing is just, you know, understanding what's in your locus of control. And at the end of the day, the only thing I can control is how I react. So I'm going to pause. Are you worth my energy? Are you worth my attention? Are you worth my effort? And I tell my students, I tell everybody in my life the same thing, like my students. Like I'm gonna work my ass off for you. However, you gotta meet me halfway. I can't have more skin in the game than you.
Hmm.
That makes zero sense.
Yeah.
So and so what that's like what essentially what that's amounted to is like when I say I don't give a fuck, I truly don't. Like when I make a decision to do something, I'm good with that decision because I know what the consequences are. And I know what the outcomes could be, right? So, like kids will ask me about the dress code because how you see me is pretty much how I go to work. Now, I will say we had a conversation after the school year, but that was something a little different. But I'm going to work with my administrators with how I dress because I see where they're going and the way they approached me, and it really isn't about me. It's about the other teachers, right?
Did they have a
But
problem
that's
with your
neither here
school?
nor there.
Did they have a
When
problem
I'm
with what you
talking
were
to
wearing?
this, huh?
Did they have a problem with what you were wearing?
So, so what's happening is, so I don't follow the dress code. I really don't. Like, if you read the dress code, I don't follow it. I wear what's comfortable. I wear my personality. Um, I'll be honest. I wear what I think the kids will find like, interesting or
Yeah.
something. My t-shirts have sparked more conversations than anything else with students, and they're all rooted in like really good shit and stuff you want to talk about and that they should be talking about, right? So the problem is their problem with me, like that, this is how they exactly approached it. The problem isn't you and the way you dress how your personality is. However, and you do your work, like I do my job the way my job's supposed to be done. However, people who don't do their job are taking my lead with the dress code, right? And when they talk to them about the dress code, well, have you talked to Palmieri? So we came up, so understanding that now, I agreed to work with, right, all right, I'm going to work with you, I'll meet you halfway. So we decided what that would look like. And at the end of the day, it's really no big deal. It's essentially what I do now.
Gotcha.
So it's no big change. But when I talk to the kids, going back to what we were talking, when I talk to the kids about it, and they ask me about the dress code and getting in trouble, and am I afraid of getting in trouble? And I said, listen, I said, I wear what I wear knowing that I am breaking the dress code. If I get in trouble, I am okay with those consequences because I knowingly made that choice.
Mm.
I said, when you kids break the dress code, you want to get mad at the person calling you out on it when you're the one who made that choice. That makes zero sense. So they kind of see it, you know what I mean? And if you could just, so it's just seeing things just a little bit differently and not necessarily, trying to see them for what they are, because what we first see, I think, is, you see something and you process it. And if you don't pause, that's what you're pretty much going to go with.
Yes.
So you process it and you take a moment and you're like, all right, is this really what's fucking going on right now? And sometimes it is. But yeah, and earlier you said about cult, like, thinking about like what my dad would do in certain situations.
Yeah.
That helps too. That helps too because my dad, he was a great example of what to do, and then he was also a great example of what not to do in some situations. You know what I mean? He was in a lot of situations where I really think he fucking blew up bridges that maybe hurt him in the
The
long
long
end.
run.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of like you didn't have to go with a stick of dynamite, you could just wait a little gasoline so you could come back.
Sure. No, yeah, I appreciate all of that, and I completely understand like the when you just mentioned now things that your father did or didn't do, how they both benefit your decision making one way or the other. I think at the end of the day, it's all about growth. If you can acknowledge it and actually get hip to it and be in tune with it and pay attention to it. There's a lot of people that I know, and there's a lot of people that I'm sure you know that just refuse to kind of like learn from that or take time to look at their actions and the reason why I brought all that up is because that's the like getting to know you through socials because we never met in person. So getting to know you through socials, it's like this vibe of Frank Palmieri. I don't know you. I just see this vibe and it's just like I'm curious. Like because I can see I'm cool and I'm all about peace, but please do not put me in a position
No.
to change my mind because you're comfortable doing what you need to do. But that's life. Like everything that we've been talking about and how you've been breaking things down for your students, that applies to life across the board. Like be willing to own up to your choices and just stand strong in what you believe in.
Man, I grew up fighting. You know what I mean? Like I fought on the regular, and then I used to get my ass kicked by my dad because I wasn't supposed to be fighting. Why are you fighting? You shouldn't be putting your hands on anybody. And then I get smacked around by him, which never made much sense. But, but I mean, so like fighting and finding myself in handcuffs, that's another thing. Like those two things are very comfortable to me.
Okay.
Like, yeah, you know what I mean? I've had to sit with my hands in handcuffs for hours, and it never really bothered me. I mean, and there's probably reasons for that that's a whole different topic. But yeah, fighting. I mean, that's something that was always seems like it's always been there. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the street kid in you uh and it's like the street kid from Brooklyn and this man that is embracing yoga and sobriety and embracing the maturity. It's like it's a beautiful combination of like, I'm still here either way. I've just learned to like navigate life, which again, that goes back to like, how can we implement this in life across the board? Because I find myself going through different phases of my life where I'm like, man, I really don't want to handle this like I would have 10 years ago. Or like, I need to step it up a little bit because I've gotten a little too soft in this area of my life, and people are starting to treat me like it's going to be okay. Felix is cool with it. And it's like, no, actually, I'm not. I've been too nice. I've been too complacent. I've been too
And then watch
passive.
out.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'm the
And
bad
then
guy.
watch out because everybody's like, "Oh wait, did you hear fucking Felix? What's that motherfucker talking about?"
He's always a nice guy. What? Where'd those words come from? When it comes to your students,
Oh.
Frank, how do you navigate being authentic in front of them, but then also making sure that they understand, like you said, you broke it down for them. These are the choices that I'm making. I'm aware of the consequences. Do you find it a tricky balance with students that are kind of like, are they able to see what you're presenting to them, or do they get a little distracted with the imagery maybe, and you're kind of like, whoa, slow down, there's a lot more here than what you're seeing?
It, it's a little bit of both, you know what I mean? But for the most part, most of them are catching what I'm throwing
Mm.
in some way because I hear it repeated here and there. And I'm like, how I'm talking here is how I talk to them. I'm like, I'm not sugarcoating anything. Like, you guys gotta know how, like, and you gotta know, like, and I'm giving you the white perspective too, which always makes things real nice for them because
Yeah.
they're like, oh shit, white people really do talk like that. Yeah, the
Yeah.
fuck they talk like that.
Yeah. Wicked.
But for me, it's not a delicate balance because I'm all in. And again, that's that fucking addict brain, right? So, like, if I'm doing something, I'm doing something. And I'm teaching. And if you want me to teach history, then I'm teaching history the way I believe history needs to be taught. I don't give a shit what fucking state laws are passed. I'm more than happy to go fucking nationwide with with being fired for that. Please give me that kind of fucking press.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I actually had a kid ask me, she's like, in the middle of like, because we are talking about the 13th Amendment and how the 13th Amendment was essentially utilized to create our prison system
Hmm.
as is, mass in prison. Uh, so, and as we're talking about this and discussing it and learning, and I'm talking, she raises her hand. She goes, "Could you get fired for telling us this?" I said, "In South Carolina, I'm not sure. It seems like I might have an argument at least about it, but I don't know about fire." She goes, "Well, then thank you." And I'm like, "Well,
Mm.
you're welcome." But so they are aware of like what's going on politically and socially, and they know when they are getting some authentic education. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So they know. They do know.
yeah.
And that comment came from a girl that I would have least expected it from.
Do you typically deal with any type of flack with other teachers, like as far as like your approach or the topics of conversation that you bring up in your lesson plans and what you're teaching? Do you ever get any type of, because you aren't going by the book? You just said that you're not doing the cookie
Right.
cutter approach. So
No, not here. In Pennsylvania, shit, I haven't thought about this in a fucking long time. So, all right. So I was probably in, my God, I'm gonna say it was like '06, '07.
okay.
So I've only been teaching at that point 5 years, and I'm teaching at William Penn, and I'm teaching African American history. So I was the white guy who taught Black history. That's how I was known until this incident. So I wanted to do something different with the kids. The kids love using that N word. So there was a book, there is a book by Randall Kennedy, um, N word, the history of a troublesome word, right?
Okay.
Um, so what I did was I got the book and I decided what I was going to do was we're going to read the book together. I would ask questions, and then what I was going to do is I was going to have them develop questions to do an action research project to go out and do interviews and find out if this word should be socially acceptable or not, right? So it was a great project. The kids enjoyed it. The kids read the book with, man, and they read that fucking book. Like, that's all
Sure.
I have to say. They came in every day ready to talk about it. Um, there were days like so I would go in between saying N word and saying the whole word because it was important for them to understand. Like, yes, I am a white person, but we're in the context
Sure.
of
Within
a
the context.
discussion,
Right. I
right?
got you.
So even though, like, because not everybody's always going to say N word, so listen to the context of the discussion, right? So, but I always took a temperature. I said, I just said that word. How many of y'all are heated? And everybody would put up their hand. And but as we went through the book, less hands, less hands, and it wasn't that they were used to it. It was that they were processing it a little bit differently, not with their emotions, but with their intellect, right?
Right.
So, the projects come and what they have to do is with what they've gained from the book and the interviews. And for the interviews, I stipulated that they had to ask so many from like each age group, right? I put a minimum on how many interviews I expected. We went through the format of the paper. The paper had to be at least 6 pages typed, minimum. The shortest paper I got in the 7 years of doing that project was 8 pages.
Oh,
Everything pretty much ranged between 12 and 18. Like, these kids put their hearts into it. So around 2007, I'm already doing this now for about 4 years, right?
okay.
2006. Um, I get called to, I forget how it went down, how it all started coming down. So there was a woman who taught across from me who was also the head of the NAACP.
Okay.
And she, as the head of the NAACP, she went to a school board meeting and complained that I was teaching this book. Her complaint was that the book was too rigorous. It was a college level book. The kids in my class were juniors and seniors headed to college,
Yeah.
but it was too rigorous. So this is what this sparked, and this is what I love about this whole thing. There was something in the York paper about it. I didn't comment. I didn't do any interviews. No one asked me any questions. I just stayed quiet because I wasn't going down like that. Like, I knew what I was doing, and I was going
Got
to
you.
let my work
Speak for
like
itself. Yeah.
work for itself. So what I did was I typed up like a 4 page rationale, and everybody from the school board president and the school board to the superintendent to the assistant superintendent to HR to the president of the union and my building principal and assistant principal. Every one of these motherfuckers read the book with the rationale, and I gave them examples of papers.
Mm.
Yeah, guess who was allowed to teach that fucking book?
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
But it was great. So it was funny because when I was leaving the school district, I saw the old school president, Miss Orr, and she's a good woman. She comes up to me, she goes, Mr. Palmieri, I'll never forget you. You're the one who taught our kids about that N word. I'm like, well, hey, thank you for remembering me like that.
I think it's pretty
My
cool too.
legacy.
I think it's cool that you were able to um take a chance to put that in the context and understand the emotional response that you would be getting from your students that were of color, especially your black students. So I think that's pretty cool, and I can appreciate that, and thank you for sharing that, because that's not. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, obviously.
Oh, I forgot to tell you. Yeah, one of the best parts about it was I got to talk to the author of the book.
Oh wow!
Um, yeah, so I knew he was a Harvard professor, so I took a shot in the dark. I called his office, left a message. He called me. He wrote me a really nice letter, and then he also talked to the superintendent about it. So yeah, that
Wow.
was really cool.
Well, yeah, there you go. So you got a cosign from
Yeah,
the author.
yeah. He said this is exactly what I intended, how I intended this book to be used.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. To understand it within context, and to get to the root of things and help people um, start putting their mind behind what we're talking about here, and leaving the emotion out of it. I can appreciate that. Um, Last time we talked, you brought up your sobriety a few times already. I remember last time we talked, you actually went into great detail about the withdrawal, and how that entire experience of going through, getting to your sobriety. Can you share that with me again? When did that
Sure.
start for you?
All right. So my addiction started back in oh 01 or oh 02. Now, prior to oh 01, I already had some experience with opiates, and I knew I liked them, right? Like I knew I liked them, and I knew enough like to just stay away from them.
Gotcha.
In oh 01, what happens is I tear my quad tendon. There was a kid, it was icy out, and he slid off the road. I stopped to help him. As I was walking over, I slipped on the ice and my quad tendon tore right off my knee. Quick dad story. So I couldn't move. I had to call 911 for an ambulance, right? So I had to call my dad to come get my car. He comes to get my car and he walks over. He goes, "What the fuck's going on?" And I'm like, I said, I said, I stopped to help this kid pull out, and I said, I think I tore my quad tendon. I can't move my leg. He kicks me. Why are you fucking stopping to help anybody? This is what you get. And he walks off. Like, I'm like, all right, thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad. I'm still stuck here.
Yeah, you know what I mean? No, fucking he left. Fucking he didn't even wait with me. The kid who was like pure white at this
Jeez.
time, like fucking glow in the dark white, like just because of everything that has happened in front of him.
Right,
Because not
right.
only did I just fall down, when I fell down, and so the tendon snapping was so loud, it sounded like I hit the car on the way down.
Wow.
Right? It sounded like somebody just hit like a fucking trash. I don't know what but it was loud. So when I hit the ground and that snapped, my initial reaction, my body's response, I threw up. I didn't even say a
Gotcha.
word. Like I fucking fell and I threw up. And this kid's just standing over me like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, oh man, that was fucking because then the quad tendon is up here on the hip.
Gotcha.
Because as
Yeah.
soon as I put because I thought I snapped my femur the way that sounded. Because I looked around, I'm like, I'm not even near the car. I didn't hit the car. So I put my hand down my pants, and as soon as I got here, I'm like, oh, that's my quad. Fuck.
Damn. So it recoiled the whole way
So
up.
yeah, it just recoiled the whole way up. Yeah. So that was the real start of my addiction because after that we get into like almost I think so 13 surgeries. Um,
Wow.
the after the repair, and I'm on opiates this whole time. So with the initial one, we started off with just Percocets, and then the following year, because of the arthritis in my knee, we decided the best thing to do was because I was too young for a knee replacement. The best thing would be to break my leg and reset it. So we did that, and that started the Oxycontin. So like on the peak of my Oxycontin, I was probably taking somewhere in the neighborhood of like 600 milligrams a day, 700 milligrams, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Mm.
I mean, I had like the pills she was writing me, I had three 80s a day. So three times that's 90 80s. And then she'd write me a script. Then that's time release. And then it was like for immediate release, she'd write me a script for like 5 milligrams. And it was like for 300 pills.
Mm.
So it was just like, man, candy store all
Yeah.
the time. Um, and then as I go through my surgeries, the addiction just gets worse. I do come off the OxyContin at one point, um, and I did that in Disney.
Okay.
Yeah, we were going to Disney, and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to take 2 days to get sober off of OxyContin. I said, because I told her it's going to kill me where I'm at right now. Like I was starting to feel it in my respiratory system. It wasn't good. So, and I picked Disney because I knew my ass wasn't gonna call for a doctor for him to pay $300 for him to come to the room to tell me he's not gonna write me a fucking script because I knew he wouldn't. So I'm like, it's the best place to do it. So I took 2 days, and man, it was a bad 2 days. It was a
Okay.
bad 2 days, but I ended up. um, Oxy's withdrawal was way worse than my Vicodin withdrawal. Um, and it's pretty violent. I mean, everything is there from the hallucinations to, man, I don't know. You name it, it was going on, and it fucking sucked. It was 2 hard days, and then the third day I just sucked it up and I started moving around. Towards the end of the week, I knew my wife had some Vicodin, and I thought this is the way my mind worked. It's not oxy, it's weaker, so it shouldn't like even fuck with my addiction. And so I took a couple of Vicodin, and that kind of put me straight, and I was able to finish out the week strong. And that started my like 6 year addiction to fucking Vicodin.
Gotcha.
So I was now, I mean, so my addiction itself, I tell people like everybody's like you should write a book. There is nothing like my addiction story, and maybe that's the story. I don't know, but I never got in any trouble, right? So I never missed a day of work because of my addiction until I was detoxing at the end, right? So I never missed a day of work. I I never got in trouble at work, never got a DWI or any bullshit like that. Never missed a kid event. I also got full custody of my kids in the midst of my addiction. So I I like to believe, universe thinks I have a real purpose here
Yeah.
because and I never had to turn to the street to cop either because I always had a doctor with a script, and I always had people that were going to bridge me because I wasn't making it from script to script, so I needed my bridges. And you know it it's just fucking weird because everybody kind of like no trouble. Yeah, no trouble. No trouble at all. And I don't know. I mean, my guardian angels could probably say something else. I could point to a lot of fucking situations where I could probably should be dead. You know what I mean? But I have, other than that, like self-inflicted bullshit. You know what I mean? And when I mean dead, I'm not out there like doing crazy shit with people. Like I'm just talking about, sitting in my fucking house with two 8 balls and let's see how fast we can do it.
Yeah. 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 And you can recall the when you were talking about your withdrawal and how violent it can get. Are you able to recall it, or is it there's a lot of it that you can't recall and you're just remembering bits and pieces?
So I mean, so I'm in Florida in one of these wacky fucking Mickey Mouse rooms, right? It's one of these fucking New Orleans rooms.
Okay.
So it's like
Okay.
a lot of purple, gold, and green. It's like fucking Mardi Gras. The only thing I could really watch on TV, it was right at the time of Casey Anthony's murder trial for her fucking daughter,
Oh, okay.
or it was like a fucking Chris, I hate everybody hates Chris marathon.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
those were my two like fucking shows. Night times were bad. Nights were bad. That's when I was sweating really bad. I didn't really have hallucinations per se, but like that fucking wallpaper was moving on me.
Mm.
Like fucking Mickey Mouse was having a good time and shit. Um, Days were just fucking long. Like just like you're just it was just suffering. And the difference between that and you fast forward maybe another 6 years. Oh no, 4 years. 4 years. So that was 2011. No, that was 2010. No, that was 2011. 2011, I got sober 2015. 2015, while I did a lot of suffering, it was way more fucking manageable.
Okay. Okay.
Way more, like, all right. So I had 4 years of fucking just Vicodin abuse and just doing whatever. And I was in bad shape, like physically. I was about 275, and I was probably taking 10 different medications at the time. So uh, one night I'm sitting down, I'm drinking my cocktail, and for the past 15 years, my cocktails at night were like about one ice cube, about that much bourbon or scotch, and about 5 pills in that. And I would just
Jeez.
drink them. And so I'm sitting there and I'm drinking. I'm on my second one. And I remember that one of my bridge people gave me a fentanyl patch, 25 no, what is it? 50 milligram. And so I'm like, man, fuck it. Why not? I remembered it. I must want to do it. Let's go do it. So now I've never fucked around with fentanyl. I don't know shit about fentanyl. All I know is that it's pretty fucking good from what I hear. And this is before like the fentanyl like craze,
Gotcha.
like before shit got crazy. And so I really never like I've heard of it and I knew it was a drug for like serious operations, but that's about it. So
Mm.
I'm looking at this fucking patch and I'm like, I can't put it on me because all I have on is a fucking t-shirt and a pair of shorts and it's October 7th in Pennsylvania. And because I know my wife would see it. So, in true addict fashion, because there's no taking a little of anything, I cut it open, I scoop it out, and I line the inside of my gum.
Mm.
I go into the living room, I sit down on the couch, and I proceed to enjoy the most incredible high I've ever had in my life. Like, it is just fucking beyond euphoric. Like, I don't even have the words.
Wow.
I don't have the words. So as I'm sitting there, I do take notice that like my breathing is becoming kind of labored. And I'm noticing that maybe I'm feeling a little like nauseous, right? Like my systems aren't feeling well. And I'm like, I think I'm fucking ODing here. Like I think I'm like I don't think I was like fucking full fledged though. Like, but shit was fucking bad. Like it was going. It wasn't gonna be good if I just stayed there. That's what I felt. Like I had to move. And the problem with that is that, on this side, the motherfucker is saying, well, if you move, you're really going to fuck up this great high. You don't want to move because this high is really fucking good. And I'm like, it's really fucking good, but I have a feeling I'm going to be really fucking dead if I don't fucking move. So, and like call 911, telling my wife, like that shit, like she literally learned about this story 4 years ago before we moved up here. I told her about it. Yeah,
Wow.
she didn't even fucking. So what happened was I stood up, I got my sandals on as quickly as I could, and I'm not calling 911. No fucking, I'm not going out like that. Like you'll find me dead in the fucking street before I call an ambulance.
Gotcha.
So that's what
Gotcha.
I was gonna do. I was going out to the street. I'm either gonna walk it off or I'm gonna drop dead. And I told her, I said, I'll be back in about 45 minutes. She's like, don't you want a jacket or something? It's cold out there. Wait, no, fuck it. I'm fine. And 45 minutes, man, I just walked and I walked and I came in and after, like, once I felt like the shit passed, and it passed, but it was, ooh, it took a minute. Um, Once it passed, and I felt like I was good, and I wasn't gonna go in, fall asleep, and die in my sleep and shit like that. I went home, and I told her, I'm like, Friday, because this was on a Wednesday. I'm like, Friday, so I'm fucking done. And she kind of laughed about it, and she's like, we'll see. And then that Friday came, and what happened was I used that Thursday to prep. I got my work shit out of the way. I told I my boss. So in my 15 years of addiction, my my boss Danielle was the only one to ever be able to fucking pick it out.
Mm,
That's it. Like she fucking knew, a lot of it had to do with her brother. Her brother died of opiates, I believe, and she always compared me. Like we had a lot of similarities, not only in addiction, but just in the way, like the way we treated her and shit like that. So that was always kind of cool. But she was the only one, and that was, and she was extremely supportive. Um, one of the reasons why I think one of the reasons why I know I was able to get through my detox that helped tremendously is because I didn't have to worry about work and what I was going back to. I knew she had it and she was
gotcha.
taking care of me. You know what I mean? So what I did that Thursday was just, get everything straight because I knew I was going to be down for a little bit. And which and then yeah, and then what I did was I wrote down what I think I should be doing. Right? Because I wanted to get it out because knowing I knew what withdrawal was like. I mean, this wasn't my first time. The opiates wasn't my first time. I mean, the when I was on the OxyContin, that wasn't my first time. I mean, I'll be honest. Every year, I probably attempted to fucking detox at least 3 times, 2 to 3
Wow.
times. So 2 to 3 times, almost every fucking year, I would get sick, but I couldn't stay sick. That was the problem. I just wasn't ready. And so what I did that Thursday was I wrote down what I wanted as far as the routine, just to keep me busy and my mind busy. So I was doing shit. And the other thing was I just got honest with myself and was like, you did this to yourself, and this is the only way out. Like this is the fucking ticket you gotta fucking pay. And you got to pay it through getting sick and all this other bullshit because that's what's on the other side. That's where you want to be. This is what you got to do. So it was my cross, and I don't think enough addicts understand that. You know what I mean? A lot of people, like, I haven't been on. I don't know if you noticed. I haven't been on Facebook in a minute.
I noticed.
Yeah, I deactivated all that
Yeah,
shit. I was just, I got tired, man. I really did. I wasn't. I don't know what I think I should be getting from it, but I wasn't getting anything, and it was making me not feel good. And coming into the election season, the way people are, I just didn't want.
I
I,
dig it.
I want to limit that stuff in my life. I really do. I mean, and I'm going on record. I'm not fucking voting for president. I'm
No.
voting local. I'm writing my name in for president though. So
Okay.
if you need a name, if you need a name to write in, Frank Palmieri, be my guest.
Copy that.
So, but the big thing that the difference was accepting it. And that was the difference in all the other times I attempted to detox. I just didn't accept it. I wasn't ready. This time I was ready and I accepted it. And it went as well as it could have went. You know what I mean? Um, what happened was I got off of the Vicodin and it was it it was tough adjusting. Like my everything fucking hurt. My
Mm,
brain, and I don't mean like I mean there was some physical pain, but it was more for me. It was like my brain. Like my brain felt like it just needed to be compressed,
gotcha.
and I was afraid of relapsing. So I took some advice and I went to a Suboxone clinic. Suboxone is kind of like methadone for people who pop pills
Okay.
and for heroin addicts.
Okay.
It's for opiates. So all it is a synthetic opiate, right? So it's a synthetic opiate in that the opiate, it's a small dose, so it helps with the cravings, and then it also coats the receptors,
Okay.
right? But it's synthetic, right? So I'm on this for a while, and then what happened was my tolerance tanked. I started getting high off of it, and I felt myself slipping back into old patterns. So I told her, I said, here's the date. I said, I'm getting off. She goes, I love her. She goes, are you gonna wean? I just looked at her. She goes, never mind. So I threw it all out and I buckled down. And at first, because I read about it and I was like, okay, it doesn't sound like it's going to be too bad. Kind of fluish, that type of thing. And so, like, for the first 2 days, there was like nothing, maybe a mild headache, but there was like nothing. And then on the third day, it was like the worst flu fucking imaginable. And
Wow.
I had it for almost 3 weeks.
Wow.
I mean, it was, and then after, so the Vicodin, I was clear and functional after 2 weeks, right? But I knew it was going to be tough go because of the way I just couldn't adjust. I didn't, I just couldn't. And I felt like, and the Suboxone, what that essentially did was give me some time to adjust,
Sure.
right? Because and so I was able to just put things into place. And then when it came time to get rid of it, I got rid of it. But I just wasn't planning on 9 weeks of like being fucking down.
Yeah.
And so it was 3 weeks of severe, like almost 3 weeks of severe like flu. And then it was about 2 weeks of mild. And then it was just 4 weeks of like recovering. Like I was put through the washer on that one. And from what I've read, it's because it's synthetic, so it attaches differently.
Okay.
So it's going
Yeah.
to leave your body differently.
Mm.
And man, I tell you what, if I would have known that, that was Suboxone was head and shoulders tougher than OxyContin, what I did in Florida. Head and shoulders tougher.
Wow.
I take 2 nights of OxyContin withdrawal over fucking that
Wow.
any day of the week. Any day of the week. And I hate being sick. But and and I think that's where addiction comes in. You know what I mean? When you're talking about anything in life and anything you want to do, and this is essentially where it just goes. Like you just got to be honest with yourself, and I think that's where a lot of people fall short. Is
Mm.
just because they're either living to an image that they're living to an image that they think people they should be living to. You know what I mean? They're striving towards things that they think people want them to strive for, or I don't know, whatever other case there is, but I don't think people live the lives that they truly want to live, and that's just because they can't really be honest with themselves. And then accountable too. Accountability has a lot to do with it. But I mean, it once you're an addict, it's more than just admitting that you're an addict and you have a problem. You have to do the work behind it, and that's creating a lifestyle that feeds sobriety.
Mm.
I have friends that don't drink, but they're not sober. You
Okay.
know what I mean? Because they're still living the same lifestyle. They're going to the bars, they're drinking the martinis, they're staying, you know what I mean? They're doing all of the same shit. And I'm not judging anybody, but you're doing that shit because you don't know how to do anything else or you're afraid to do something else. So you rather take that risk and put yourself in that type of situation than just create something new. And that new is, you know, people struggle with alcohol is tough.
Yeah.
Alcohol is tough. I think that when I drew the straw on addictions, I in a way I kind of got lucky because I can't go into like a Turkey Hill and see opiates on a fucking like Vicodin on a shelf.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know what I
I
mean?
got you.
Where beer and liquor is
It's
all
right
over the
there.
fucking
Sure.
place, man. And it's so ingrained. I mean, it's so ingrained in the culture that if you're not drinking, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
why are you sober? Why aren't you drinking? As opposed to just being kind of like that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Why do I even have to answer that
Why do I
question?
have to
Like,
explain myself?
why can't I just say I don't want to drink and that's it?
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of. I was talking to my class, and this was my advanced class, and they asked me if I drank, and I said no. I've been sober for 9 years, going on 9 years now. And the one girl looks at me and she goes, "When people say sober, it usually means they have an addiction." I said, "Well, in this case, you would be correct about this person." And then we talked about it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
I
And
can
she was like,
appreciate that.
"Thank you for talking about it." I'm like, "Why wouldn't I? It's
Yeah.
part of life." You know what I mean? Everybody has their own fucking battles that they go through every day. You know what I mean? I think if we, I think the healing, the getting through of those battles, right? The winning of those battles, the healing from those battles, it all happens with vulnerability, right? So you offering opportunities like this for people to come on and be vulnerable. I mean, you know what I mean?
Sure.
It is beautiful because hopefully that catches on. You know what I mean? Because that's where the life is. You know, we put up these shells and everybody's living in their own little fucking worlds and not paying attention to anything else. And then shit goes sideways when the worlds collide. And yeah, we're just so disconnected.
Yeah, and it also like opens the opportunity. Like what I've experienced from doing this for 3 years now is like it even for me it opened up opportunities for me to be to give myself. I was allowed to be naive and be honest about I'm naive about whatever it is we're talking about. Explain it to me. Let me learn. Tell me your story. Like it's okay to admit that you don't know or that there's things that you could learn from other people. You know what I mean? I feel like it's people get clowned for like being vulnerable in that state. And so I've learned, even though I was aiming for it, I was surprised at how much more I learned for myself. Like it's okay to be vulnerable in the not knowing, not knowing
Yeah.
people's the struggle, like addiction or like people going through X, Y, and Z, different types of strife, physical abuse, domestic abuse, whatever it is. And it's like being vulnerable enough to just let the cards on the table to talk about your story, but then also on the flip side, like be bold enough to ask the questions and to you know, kind of like let's talk about the nitty gritty, the shit that years ago would have been taboo to discuss on a
Mm-hmm.
platform and where many people are going to watch and listen. So I can appreciate that. One of the things that I was really appreciating as you were telling that, um, thank you very much for sharing that the withdrawal experience. I can't help but notice that you're able to stay level headed even when you were going through a withdrawal or experiencing what you felt was an OD. Like you were still able to be level headed enough to be like, I need to be proactive and do something about that. Is that, am I reading that right? Am I reading the room correctly in that regard? Or like did you ever notice that? Because you always hear the stereotypical stories of people who go through these struggles, but they get caught up in it and they don't make it out, for you know lack of better phrase of saying it. But as you're talking to me, it's like even when you're going through your shit, you're still putting you know the root the Tetris. You're putting pieces in and playing the game still. Is that right?
So, man, you could call me fucking Picasso, right? I worked so fucking hard hiding my addiction that I wasn't going to let anything fuck it up. So the fentanyl was a fucking huge misstep because that was the true addict. because the rationale would have been, listen, motherfucker, you haven't played with this shit. Take a taste,
Mm.
right? And maybe if that was earlier in the day, that would have been the approach. But at this time in the day, I already got close to 50 pills in me. I don't give a fuck about nothing. As a matter of fact, at nighttime, I tend to be more irritable than anything because all that Vicodin just makes you fucking like you want to just strangle somebody.
Mm.
So, the fentanyl was a huge misstep, but what kept me in check, kind of like one foot on the ground, where I would sit back and feed my addiction, but never like go crazy with it, was the fact that I just didn't want to be that guy that lost his job because of it. Um, like lost his kids because of it. I didn't want my kids to see me as that. You know what I mean? So all that shit kind of kept me grounded, for the lack of a better word,
Yeah.
somewhat. You know what I mean? Somewhat grounded, where and I've always been in tune with my body, and so like I know when something's off, and I knew something was off. I didn't think it wasn't it wasn't the normal. Like I've been sick off of Vicodin, like eating too many Vicodin at once, and it's not necessarily the Vicodin, but it's more the Yasin. Well, it doesn't matter. You get fucking sick, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I know what that feeling feels like when I've eaten too many and I get sick off of it. Now, this was different.
Gotcha.
Like, so I really think I was traveling down that road. And the big key for me was just the how hard it was to breathe. Like I was used to having some respiratory like tightness or heaviness because of the amount of Vicodin I was eating. So I knew what that felt like. This was something fucking totally fucking different.
Mm.
Totally different. Felt like
No.
somebody had a boot onto my chest.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate you breaking
Yeah.
that down again for me, man. You mentioned
Yeah.
at one point you were 275, and
Mm.
when you brought up social media, when I'm following you, I do recall you sharing some photos. I'm about 280 myself, so looking at where you're at now, and hearing that you were at 275, I'm kind of going into the life that you're living now, where you're eating right, you're sober, but you're also, it's the lifestyle, it's the all
It has
encompassing.
to be, right?
Yeah, the yoga, the like. Can you talk to me about like where you are now, and considering
Okay.
everything we just talked about?
All right. So when I came out of the Vicodin addiction, you remember I told you I wrote down the routines and everything. So those were the routines. I kept those routines. They were working for me, right? So basically, it was like I wrote down. I created a morning routine. Um, I created what I would. I created what I would do during my planning periods, and then an after school, after work routine, and then like an after dinner routine. And so I put that all together and I worked that up until the point then I was going through my Suboxone withdrawal. And during that, it became apparent that I had to address some of my health concerns, right? My wife's looking at me like you're gonna fucking die.
Mm.
I was on medication for what, blood pressure, cholesterol, depression, sleep, anxiety, asthma, acid reflux, so
Mm.
7. Um, so I decided we were looking around like what are we gonna do? And I was type 2 diabetic. So we decided that I talked to my doctor and he said something about the whole 30. So we looked into it, and the whole 30, basically you follow their program, and if you follow their program, they say you should lose 30 pounds in 30 days. Okay. So I followed their program, and in 90 days, I lost 115 pounds.
Oh.
Um, my wife lost some pounds, and everything was going fairly well. And then the weight started coming back on. And in another 6 months, I put the 100 pounds right back on. And type 2 diabetes never left. I was still on the same medications. That never dropped. Like things just weren't right. So my wife, she's doing her research and she's like, "How do you feel about going plant-based?" I'm like, "Hey, I don't care. I'll try anything. I'm pretty easy when it comes to food." And so we went plant-based, and in 3 months, so in 3 months we went, oh no, I'm sorry, 9 months. 9 months plant-based. And the first 6 months, I came off of all the medication except for my asthma medication, which I cut the script in half, and that's it. Just my
Wow.
asthma medication. Um, I was thinking about a steroid I was taking, but I'm not on that anymore. That was for something else. Um, so I came off all medication. I reversed when I went back for blood work, I had reversed the type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
So I
Wow.
lost 115 pounds. Now, during those 9 months, all I did was eat what I ate what she put in front of me. I knew what not to eat. So I just followed it as I should. I ran every so often. I was still living in Pennsylvania. I wasn't running as much because the weight was really beating me up on runs. So I was just doing a lot of yoga, a lot of Bikram yoga. So I was in a room that was 120 degrees every day with about 50% humidity for 90 minutes. So that was my workout. And in 9 months, I lost 115 pounds. Medications were gone, diabetes was gone. And 8 years later, I've maintained it off.
Wow.
So
Wow.
my wife is definitely the rock star
Yeah. Yeah.
of the operation. Like, I mean, her cooking is just phenomenal.
What's your wife's name?
She Joy.
Joy.
So Joy, yeah. So she keeps it interesting, and so she lives with like Indian dishes. That's one of her like that's one of her best in her wheelhouse. She just started making a Caribbean stew,
Mm.
and one of my coworkers is from Jamaica, so I gave her some, and she was very impressed with how like correct the spices were.
Mm.
She's like, that was perfect spice. So I was like, all right. So, and she's really good with like Asian cooking, like curries. Curries, that's her wheelhouse.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so because of that, I mean, it makes it nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and we don't eat out.
Okay.
I don't want to eat out. That's how good her food is. I don't want to eat out anymore.
Well, I think I would think that when you're used to that lifestyle change, eating out, how would that play in that? Would you even if you wanted to, could you?
Yeah, I mean, there are places we can go. So, like,
Ah,
when her
gotcha.
and I are like, "Hey, you want to eat out?" We usually go to an Indian, Thai, or Chinese restaurant.
Gotcha.
Or she just found a Mexican restaurant actually that she likes. So, and all of those places pretty much have they're very easy to turn into a plant-based meal, and that's what people are telling me, well, how do you start? I mean, me being the addict, once again, all in. So we decided on a Sunday, and that Monday we were all plant-based.
Wow.
So what I tell people is like, um, keep it, if you focus on Mediterranean, Asian, uh, Mexican types of dishes, Indian, those dishes tend to be already vegan and plant-based. And in most of them, it's just maybe dropping butter or dropping like the meat. Other than that, they're pretty much ready to go. So they're easiest to alter in recipes. And then focus on one meal for like 2 weeks. And once you got that meal down, move to two meals. And what I tell people is focus on dinner. Make enough that you have leftovers. Now you have two meals out of the way. And that's what like there we have a couple of staples that she'll make every week, and that's my lunch every week.
Gotcha.
So it's it's once you find that rhythm, it's easy. It's just thinking differently. That's it. And people are stuck that you need meat, you need meat. You really don't. I'm living proof.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's not like I'm sitting on my ass doing nothing like eating plants. I ran, I run ultra marathons where I ran 12 hours, 44 miles. I've ran 32 miles under 7 hours. So, and that's all on plants.
Yeah,
Hell, at
yeah.
one point at some point it just becomes potato chips and Coke, but any rate, it's plants.
I think it's cool too, like the what you just pointed out, like the the stereotypical viewpoint of plant based eating is the lack of energy that you'll have, and you're running marathons. You were just alluding to about 20 minutes, not even maybe 10 minutes ago, that you couldn't even do much running because of the weight, and now you're running 44 miles, 32 miles. Like that's a complete 180.
Yeah,
You ever take a step back and look at the the way that your life has shifted and how much the 180 degree in your life? Like, have you ever taken a step back and looked at that?
every day,
Yeah,
every day. You know what I mean? Every day, and look in the mirror. You know what I mean? I've definitely I've hit the lottery in a lot of different ways. I have to say, you know what I mean? And I'm very fortunate for that. Uh, so whatever I think, however I'm living my life and whatever I'm doing in my life, I think it's vibing well with the universe.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just trying to, walk my path and enjoy as much as I can and see what the next moment brings.
yeah, man. That's one of my favorite questions to ask, is because that's what I do a lot of, is kind of like, and again, it's the older I get, the more I'm like trying to pay attention to the energy around me and the space that I'm in, and being appreciative, and trying to better myself, and taking a look at where I've been, where I want to go, and like those small little moments of being like, oh man, am I am I putting more into this life than I'm taking, and am I honoring this life somehow? Like, I don't want to be a waste, and so, it's like you said, the universe, and it's like paying attention to shit like that for me is important, because it's like, man, I don't know how to live life without like being reflective and being and paying attention to the path that I'm on, and looking at where I'm going. um to wrap up this conversation, I would like to ask you one last question. Like, um what is something that you would like people to get from life, like, considering everything we talked about and your perspective on things, like, obviously being a teacher, and seeing younger minds at work, what's something that you would like people in general to get out of life?
I think you get out what you put in,
Mm,
right? Life isn't gonna, if you just sit there, all you're gonna get out of life is whatever sitting there is gonna give you, right? So I think if whatever you want out of life, or uh, life really doesn't owe you anything. So what do you want? You know what I mean? What's gonna feed you? You know what I mean? And that's the direction you move. But I think to get the most out of life,
yeah.
I think it has to come from serving.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Everybody serves in a different way. Like, so I don't mean that means you got to go out and be a teacher or some bullshit like that. No, you're serving right now, right? You're serving the greater good. You're putting stories out there that you feel are important and that maybe somebody else could help somebody else. So if you have 1 million followers and and it helps one person, then that's fucking huge. You know what I mean? Right? So I think I think the people who get the most out of life are people who serve,
Mm.
based on what I've seen and
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think I'm one of the very few that got to experience, that celebration of my service. When I left York, I didn't get any parties, right? I'm not a party guy. Like, I truly believe that, you know, I, I receive my karmic fruit, right, for what I do, but I don't eat it, right?
Gotcha.
Like you're doing, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right? So I don't want a pat on the back. I don't need a pat on the back. So my secretary at the time worked very hard. No parties, so she put down a couple of parties. But
Okay.
what did happen was, huh?
No, no, no. I'm listening.
What what did happen was former students just started coming in like fucking out of the woodwork
Oh,
and just thanking me for shit that I haven't thought about. You know what I mean? Like one girl shot me a text. She goes, I just want you to know that there was one day in my junior year where I was having a really bad day. You were the only one who noticed and asked me if I was all right. I told you yes, and you told me you didn't believe me, but said okay.
that's cool.
I'm like, you know what I mean? So to feel that, right, was amazing. Like I couldn't have asked for anything more than those experiences, and there were so many of those experiences. So that it, touching people you didn't even know you touched. So that was a really cool experience, and I'm like, most people fucking don't get that. They have to wait till they're dead
Yeah.
to get to know that, and to know the impact I've made, or to at least get a sense of the impact. That made me feel really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Be of service. It's not that hard,
So
really, if you think about it.
yeah, no, and I do think if you're serving, you will get the most out of your life. I mean, if you think about through service, you'll grow. There's growth through service. So yeah,
Frank
if that
Palmieri,
answers your
brother.
question.
It does, man. It was a phenomenal answer. I appreciate it.
All
I
right.
appreciate this conversation, man. Thank you so much. I look forward. I think I said this last time. I'm going to say it again. I do look forward to meeting you in person, man. I know we have some mutual friends through socials. That's how I got hip to you. But I look forward to seeing you. Until
Yeah,
then,
when I get up to PA, I'll definitely
yeah, hit
I'm
me up.
not getting up to PA anytime soon. All my cars took a shit.
Hey, hey, I know. I was
But
watching the video you posted up. This was probably like 8 months ago, and there was a storm. I don't know if it was a tornado or something going through your area, and I was like,
oh, that was just a heavy storm. Yeah,
okay,
man, we
okay.
get some good ones.
Yeah, I just knew you were balls to the wall walking through it. I'm like, God bless you,
Yeah,
man, because
yeah, yeah, we get some good shit here, man. Good stuff.
all right, Frank. Well, I don't want to hold you up anymore. It's getting late. Thank you so much, brother.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm gonna let you go now. You enjoy your evening, man.
always fun, my man. Thank you very much. All right, take care.